we finally get the history, or at least part of Demerzel's origin and how she came to be part of the Cleonic dynasty. And if that's not enough, the Empire strikes back. Very epic penultimate episode of Foundation. Welcome back. This is Sean's Take. My name is Sean Redmond. This is my take on Foundation, Season 2, Episode 9, entitled Long Ago, Not Far Away. So did Brother Day commit what I think might be his most mortal mistake? I'm going to save that for a little bit later. This is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the episode, go watch the episode and then come right back here. From this point forward, I'll assume you've seen the episode or you don't care if I spoil it for you. Also, I will be using clips from the show to illustrate some points that I'm making, and that is covered under the fair use provision of the Copyright Act of 1976. Let's get into it. And I'm not going to go beat for beat through the episode. I find it a little more interesting when we just go through the storylines as a whole that we saw. So I'm going to start with Gaal and Salvor and save Brother Day and Demerzel for the end. So we didn't spend a lot of time on Ignis with Gaal and Salvor, but a lot happened in the few minutes we did spend there. So Salvor did rescue Gaal from the table using the same emitters or discs or plates or whatever we want to call them that she used to get out of her prison silo. We did see a shot of Josiah. I'm going to come back to Josiah in just a second. It seemed like Tellem was almost finished with her ritual, but Salvor rescues Gaal. Gaal's eyes are rolled over white, and Salvor slaps her and slaps sense back into her, and she becomes Gaal again. So there's an opening there for future seasons, but let's keep going with the storyline. Gaal tells Salvor that they never moved the beggar, that moving the beggar was just all an illusion, and so they start heading towards the beggar to get off planet. Lauren, the guy that had pretended to be Salvor's boyfriend before, is chasing them. And Salvor sends Gaal ahead so that she can deal with this. Blah, blah, blah. Gaal get the beggar ready for flight. Lauren uses the illusion of, let me think of his name. Hugo. That's it. Hugo Cast, Salvor's lover. So Lauren uses the illusion of Hugo to distract distract Salvor, and it works every single time. A little disappointing in Salvor, to be blunt, but she does overcome it in time. Now the fight between these two is actually pretty good. Pretty good choreography. It actually looks like a fight. And everybody is sort of taking damage. Like, as the fight goes on, both of them are acting as if they're in a fight. You know, you can't quite move as quick. Not that I've ever been in a fight. But Salvor makes it back to the beggar. She gets through the airlocks and orders the beggar to close them and captures Lauren in the airlock between the doors. And then he shows Hugo again, but she does overcome finally and gives the order for the beggar to vent the air from the airlock, killing him. I thought there was hope for him. I thought he might have turned out to have a bit of nice guy in him, but didn't turn out that way. So then Gaal got back to the beggar to find that Tellem was already there. And at first, I wasn't sure whether Tellem was actually there or if it was a projection or an illusion, or perhaps somebody else being an illusion of Tellem, which may or may not still be the case. But we're going to pretend like it was Tellem because a few things indicated that it was. So a fight ensues between these two, which is both a physical fight and a psychic fight. And Gaal does okay. And Tellem makes her mistake in taking Gaal to the vision of the mule again. And the mule knows Tellem. And it scares Tellem to her core. Because the one thing she's afraid of is dying. Illusion is broken. We're out of the dream. And a very much not dead Hari Seldon turns up suddenly and clubs Tellem to death quite graphically. So I guess there's something else about this incarnated version of Hari that we don't yet know. Yeah, because he was definitely in the water for at least 2 days. You know, we saw him dead the day that they drowned him. And then at a minimum, we saw him the next day when Salvor went back. And that might have been longer, I'm not sure. So there's something else about Hari. Perhaps he's not only resurrected, but maybe he's immortal. Who knows? We're going to... Maybe we'll find out next week. But I think that's one we're going to leave hanging. And we're not going to understand, really. Because next week's the last episode. We're almost done with the season. I can't believe it. But that's really everything that happened to Gaal, Salvor, and, turns out, Hari. And they have the beggar and they can escape. So, let's just touch on Josiah again, the little boy. I think there is a possibility that he's going to grow up to be the mule. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Do you think Josiah is going to grow up to be the mule? So let's go over to the other storyline, the big storyline. We opened the show, the episode of Foundation, with a flashback to 610 years ago. And we hear our narrator telling the story of how Cleon I found the secret room that nobody had been in for thousands of years and discovered Demerzel. What I didn't realize is that Cleon I's father was not emperor. That it was Cleon I's mother who was empress. When we saw the big statue, and he referred to his mother as the empress, I thought it was because she was married to his father, the emperor. But as it turns out, we never actually see Dad. He's just a silhouette. And when Mom dies, when Cleon I reports to Demerzel that his mother had died, he would be taking the throne. That's the passage of succession. So anyway, we see him find Demerzel. We find that Demerzel offers to tell the little boy stories. And to nobody's shock or surprise, this little boy continues to go back to see the very pretty, very naked lady tell him stories. Yep. So we do find out, though, in the narrative that Demerzel was imprisoned like this for 5,000 years, approximately. So the fact that it took her probably 50 years to get Cleon to let her out isn't really all that long by comparison. Right? We found out that Demerzel is over 18,000 years old, that she's from Earth, and we did get a look inside her little toolbox. And they made an allusion to the fact that even though she's the last one and very rare, that within her is the blueprint for how to make more like her. And that's interesting. And the toolbox is how she works on herself. And that's the toolbox with the Earth system of planets on it. Without Pluto. And we do find out that she's from Earth and that she was a leader during the robotic human wars. So Cleon decides, and we see Cleon be, Dawn, first the little boy, and then become Dawn, and then become Day. And then as Dusk, he releases her and plants the inhibitor chip. Was it me? Anybody that watched the show Silo, did the thing that he put in Demerzel's neck look like the birth control thing that they took out of the sheriff's wife? Let me know what you think. It just occurred to me when I saw it. But he puts the inhibitor chip in her neck so that she can harm humans, but she just can't harm a Cleon. So that's very important. So we've come forward again. We are at Terminus. And Day has gone to see what the Foundation is and what's going on. And he predictably tours the church, which is not a church. And he proclaims Terminus an armory and the church a cult. He has the priests killed and the scientists taken into custody. And then as he's leaving, he sees the vault. And he wants to go talk to Hari. Because that's why he came, was to talk to Hari, face to face. So he walks to the vault, which does not have its null field activated. And he walks right up to it. And he takes off his protection, his aura, and his gauntlet, whatever that was, and his cape. And he screams for Seldon, who's right behind him. It says, "I'm here, Empire." And then Hari takes a moment, and I like the fact that he did this. Hari takes a moment and warmly greets Polly, and warmly greets Lady Demerzel, and then addresses Day again, and says, "Let's go talk in my office." And so Hari and Brother Day and Demerzel go into the vault. Now, we did forget a little bit, or it didn't matter, I guess, that time runs differently inside the vault. Or maybe it only runs differently when it needs to. Because it didn't seem to today. But the conversation between Day and Hari is contentious. And it becomes more and more clear that Hari understands who's in charge of the Empire. Because every time he makes a point that matters, he turns to Demerzel to make it clearly to her. And he speaks with complete respect to her. And she notices that. And then when he turns back to Day, he needles him and he prods him and he pokes him. And finally, when Demerzel says, "Why didn't you try to kill us when we came in here?" And Hari says, "Well, you'd have just uncorked another one," gesturing to Day, which triggers Day completely. His anger erupts. He knocks all the stuff off Hari's desk. He can't stand the idea that he's not a unique individual, that he's being addressed as if he's just a clone. And that's Hari's point, because he is just a clone. And he says, "You didn't account for me. I've done everything you were afraid I wouldn't do." And Hari says, "I've met outliers. I've met them. You're not one." And that angers him even more. And now he's had it. Day has had it. And he leaves Hari and the vault. And they get back on the ship, the shuttle. And they go. And he gives the order for, well, in the meantime, there was a space battle, which was actually pretty good. They did a good job with it. And I like the Imperial switchbacks that General Rios's husband was flying. I thought those were kind of cool, maneuverable. And during it, he, Gawain, Rios's husband, shoots out the engines. So the Invictus is functionless. But in the process, his ship is damaged, and we find out that he is on the planet's surface. We find out he's on the planet's surface as Brother Day, Empire, gives General Rios the order to crash the Invictus into the planet. Now, the Invictus has a singularity as part of its engine drive. So crashing the ship onto the planet will release a singularity, otherwise known as a black hole, on this planet, and the planet will turn itself inside out, killing everybody. So Rios knows his husband is alive on the planet. His emperor has given him an order and has now repeated the order. And reluctantly, Rios gives the order, and they push the Invictus into the planet. The singularity does, in fact, eat the planet. And Gwen, and Polly, and everyone else in the Foundation are killed. The Terminus is no more. Hober Mallow and Brother Constant are on board the ship. They have not been killed yet. So that's pretty big. I mean, it's called Foundation, and the Foundation's been destroyed. And we still have an episode to go. Also, in this episode, after speaking to Hari, Demerzel and Day get back onto the ship. Demerzel gets a message, and she says, I have to go home. There's something I need to attend to. Which is most likely the fact the prison's been activated, and Brother Dusk and Rue are trapped. And she's gotten word that that trap has been sprung. And she has to go deal with that. But she and Day end up in a conversation where she explains to him that he's been different and difficult his entire life, and she couldn't control what he thought and the way he acted, and that she even initiated a physical relationship to gain more sway over his decision-making. And then she gives the order and leaves. She does stay long enough, or at least on her ship there in this, long enough for her to see Terminus was destroyed. So she has told Day that whether he likes it or not, she's in charge. Hari knew that Demerzel's in charge. Brother Dusk now knows that Demerzel is in charge. Last week we saw Brother Dawn, figure out that Demerzel is in charge. So next week will be the fight, I assume, to whether the Cleons will continue to rule or if Demerzel will just take over. The other important thing that we needed to realize that we were told long ago, and now we know why we were told it. So Cleon I put in the chip that stops Demerzel from injuring a Cleon. But yet, last season, we saw Demerzel snap the neck of Brother Dawn when they found out he was colorblind. That's a Cleon that she damaged. So now we know. Now we know it was Demerzel that altered the DNA so the clones are now different. So that she can now harm these Cleons. They are genetically different enough that that restriction is no longer on her. So that's interesting. And, huge spoiler alert, when the SAG-AFTRA strike was called, this production company was filming season 3 of The Foundation. So Apple TV Plus has never announced that they've picked up Foundation for season 3, but they were actually in production and filming when the strike was called. So we would guess there's going to be a season 3. I think they were in production for 4 or 6 weeks before the strike was called. So they did get some bit filmed, which would mean when the strike is over, they'll resume. That would be money spent that Apple TV won't want to lose. So that's good news, I think. We'll at least get a season 3. And what sort of cliffhanger will we leave season 2 on? Let me know in the comments what you think. Consider hitting that subscribe button. But for now, that's it for this one. My name's Sean. This is Sean's Take, and I'll see you next time.